Hi all, how are we? Welcome to Arena, a new podcast from the Irish Examiner. My name is Maurice Brosnan, and today we're talking about golf's first major of the year, a tradition unlike any other. We're talking about the Masters. So I'm in Augusta National, Georgia, currently for the Examiner, and it's very hard to say anything original about the place. I spent years watching this tournament or reading about it or listening to other people talk about it. And in terms of first impressions, yeah, all of the usual cliches that you hear are definitely true. It is a lot hillier than it looks on TV. The greens are deceptively large. At the same time, I suppose, particularly in the context of the former, you do have an appreciation for why that is the case. Because if they tried to capture the angles and the slopes, it would just make for very bad TV. You're looking at certain fairways where it's just blind shots and you can't see the hole. And I think about it in the context of, Rory hit that towering approach through the gap in the trees that only he could see on the seventh. If you look at that shot or look at that hole from the green, which is the camera that actually caught it, is just a big stand right behind it. The face of that green is so steep. But to appreciate that, you would have to be at ground level. So you either don't get appreciation for what was a phenomenal shot, or you don't get appreciation for the slopes. And in the context of what the vast majority of people want, they want the action. So I think it's pretty understandable why that is the case, definitely. At the same time, I'm loath enough to talk too much about my first impressions of the place because obviously, your first time, my first time here, so there's a naturally small bit of imposter syndrome about that anyway. And also, it's very self-indulgent. Like the way media treat it here is phenomenal and a bit ridiculous. And I think more interestingly, really, is actually what is it that makes the tournament? What is it about the Masters? An extension of that is what is it about golf? And an extension of that is what is it about sport? Why are we as infatuated and dedicated to this thing? So I think about it in the context of myself. The reason that I love sport as much as I do is because it just captures the full human spectrum. You see the very best and the very worst of people within that. And the obvious allure is the best of people, is to see the art and the science. Now, I am also conscious that maybe GA fans or anybody who listens to the GA podcast might be pointing this out. A fair accusation of the likes of myself is that we're too wedded to the latter in context that, the strategy and science of the sport. But there is obviously something just undeniable about the art of sport too. But watching a Rory McIlroy or a David Clifford or a Katie Taylor in full flow, that the action is the juice. Like that's the thing that we're all chasing. It's the buzz that got you hooked on sport in the first place. It is a phenomenal thing. It's a very challenging thing to try and articulately reflect. It is also, though, an inaccessible or a lot of us don't necessarily understand that as a concept. I talk now as a tribe who consider themselves borderline talentless. Anything you do, there's a bit of toil involved in it, and you would therefore fall back on strategy or tactics or whatever it is to get through. And there is, for a lot of, I am actually very fascinated by that element of sport as well. I have to say, the reason I am is because it is the way that a lot of an underdog would concede, or it's the way that sport tends to go. So the opposition sit in, you decide to shoot from the outside. They step out, we get in behind. You're in a race, somebody goes off really hard, you sit in and try and catch them at the end. The kind of chess game that happens in all these sort of games, it's how a lot of athletes or teams survive. As I said earlier, it's how underdogs can succeed. It's also how favourites have to evolve. And look, Augusta National and the Masters is art. Absolutely it is. But it is also defined by strategy. It's the best of both worlds. And that's, for me, is what makes it. So I think about in the context of, like, the third hole here is Flowering Peach, par 4, 350-yard hole. It's the best short par 4 in the world. And it is defined by strategy. It's the risk-reward game that a lot of people are pursuing in golf. What I mean by that is you can do what Rory McIlroy did on his final round of the Sunday last year, and you can try and drive it, or you can do what Bryson DeChambeau, and try and lay it up. The reason that someone like that, who's a phenomenal drive, are laying it up is because the second shot there is just torturous. I mean, it's an up and down shot. You're talking about 30 feet, of absurdly tricky shot in terms of what you're trying to generate with the spin and get that ball to sit, or the threat that could come if you overcook that. And so the strategy for certain people is to do the opposite, to lay off, especially given the pin position for a Sunday like that, and try and play around it. And I do find that fascinating. I do find that how you weigh that up, and is that an art in itself, or is there a bit of science that goes into that? I think that is pretty interesting. Now, when I think about that in a more kind of broad terms, I actually walked the course my first day here, and I suppose it sounds kind of twisted, but I started on the 18th and went backwards because I wanted to start with the greens given the fact that strategy dictates so much here, if you know what I mean. And another cliche about the place is that Augusta National it's like the New York thing. It's a character in itself. That is a cliche, but you just can't escape it. I mean, honestly, when you're walking it, you start on that 18th and you might be looking at the green and you're saying, oh, Phil's putt in 2004 when he put in, or Sandy Lyle's out of the sand, thinking about all these phenomenal memories that you would have and associate with that hole in particular. And then you start to walk down and suddenly it hits you just like a ghost. Geez, there's Greg Norman, that funeral procession walk up the fairway when the walls caved in for him. And that happens to you again and again, everywhere you go. You go to the 17th, start thinking about Jack Nicklaus, the putt for the birdie, the yes sir, and the hand raised above him. And then suddenly you get that flash of Kenny Perry going over and back across the very same green. It just keeps happening. I thought about it in the context of the 12th, and before I came out here, I reread Bob Bertella's book, Golf Isn't Again Perfect, and he has a bit on it about picking your target. So you pick a small target, and that's what a lot of players tend to do. And it explains how Freddie Couples got absurdly lucky on that 12th, where the ball just clang on rather than dropping into the water. So I was thinking about that as I was walking it. But sure, it's the same place where Jordan Spieth had that absolute disaster, and the whole thing unraveled for him as well. And look, that's something that you're conscious of as a fan, but it's also something that players themselves have to balance with. We spoke to Shane Lowry underneath the big oak beside the first there yesterday, and he's literally turning around, he's looking to his left and he's saying, geez, I've spoken to Rory about sitting in that spot right there, look, sitting on that lawn when we're 70 and being able to host a Champions Dinner and belonging here.
I'd love to be coming back here forever. Like, I'd love to be 70 years of age sitting out on that lawn with Rory having a drink. We've talked about that. I'd love to be that person. I'd love to be going to Champions Dinner forever. Like, there's a lot that comes with it, and a lot that you try not to think about it too much. But I think I've always said I'd love to be the first Irishman to win a green jacket, but that's obviously can't be the case anymore. So the second would be pretty nice. Yeah, I'd love to. Obviously, where would it go on my pedestal of what I've done? It'd be well up there. Obviously, everything is, the Open and the Ryder Cups. They're all different in their own way, and this would be very, very special. Yeah.
And he can see that in his mind's eye, while also conscious and telling us that every single time he's driven out Magnolia Lane, he's done so unhappy. He's never been happy, despite the fact that his record is pretty good. Or he's tied third previously. I think it's somewhat underrated that he went into the Saturday last year and he was right there in contention. And then the wheels obviously came off and finished with a dreadful final day where he shot 81. But that was in his mind's eye. So you're balancing both. You see the dream and the phenomenal canvas, the theatre of the place, but you also see the nightmare. And in the player's context, you've experienced the nightmare. And I know that's, there's something perverse about that. But look, we're all on this slow march towards the inevitable. You need that kind of that risk reward element. That's why we like sport. Again, I go back to it. It's the thing that Augusta summarizes in its essence. It's the brilliant part of the place. It can be absolutely beautiful. It can be absolutely brutal. And how do you manage either one of those? Is it about reason or is it about imagination? Rory McIlroy actually, he told some great stories yesterday. He's in phenomenal form at the minute. He's so relaxed. The place it's house Rory. Walked the practice round with him yesterday, and I mean, for example, I went out with John Ram today. There might be, you count the number of people that are following him from hole to hole, and it's only a practice round. You got Rory McIlroy, and you're talking about a crowd that's 5 deep. It's the conversation that's happening ever around the course. He's relishing in it. Played a men's corner and just stitching approaches within feet of the hole, and doing what he did on that 7th earlier, where he's leaving the putt short as well. But that manifests itself in all these kind of different ways, and he goes into a press conference and he's uber relaxed. And I don't know if anybody remembers, after last year's Masters, he asked the journalist a question at the very start where he said, what are we all going to talk about? So he came back a year later, and naturally the question was, well, what do you think the story is now? And he gave this brilliant answer.
I think the nice thing now is, instead of it being, come on, Rory, you can do this, it's back to back. There's a real positive connotation to it, instead of, geez, Rory, we've been waiting a while, when are you going to get this done? So it's very different, and maybe that's just my perception of it, but it is, it is so nice to walk around property or be out on the golf course and just not have that hanging over me. That it feels like it's a big weight off my shoulders.
And I think what he's getting at there is exactly that. It can be both. This place can be torturous for you, or it can now suddenly be a complete unburdened. He can play freely by that. And I don't know what that means for his game, by the way. I mean, it's just as likely to me that he goes and is completely unburdened, is uber relaxed and shoots a phenomenal round, or that the other extreme. I don't think it'll be middle of the road. It'll be one or the other, basically, given our experiences of the Rory coaster. And that, for me, is the great thing about the place. It can crush you or it can create you, and to feel one, you need to feel the other. And there's a whole yin and yang thing about the place, but that's the allure. It's the thing that we're looking for. Can they manage that control, or is it going to slip from their grasp? Tom Bristow is the US sports editor at Reach. He's also been my chauffeur and my guide for the week. So I get his thoughts on all of that now. Tom, what is it that makes the Masters?
The tradition, the beauty, the history. Just to elaborate on the first couple, the no phones on the course. It's simple but effective, brilliant. Everyone's living in the moment. The beauty. There's a reason why my first flower in my garden back home was an azalea. Because it's just the most stunning course. When you look at it on TV, and I grew up watching this tournament, I just thought this place looks like heaven, right? It's amazing, it's beautiful. You come here, it's even better. And it's sometimes it's hard to describe, actually, despite the irony of me in that job. But yeah, it's just a very beautiful place.
The phones thing, actually, I'm glad you said that. I was at a Fred Again gig, the DJ in London recently, and he gave out people stickers at the start of it to cover their camera. And it's the way it grounds you is it's only when you actually experience it that you realize just the difference it makes when you're not surrounded by people holding out phones. And then you come here, and even the last 2 days, it's practice round, so you see people with cameras and you hear the wind of, you constantly hear that kind of digital wind for people scrolling cameras. But that sense of everybody being present is, I think, arguably its greatest selling point.
It's incredible. Even from a working point of view, it makes things totally different. I can't quickly text someone, "Oh, I've just seen this," or file a line from the course. It's just not possible. I'm there with a pen and a notepad, like old school, and living in that moment. As I said earlier, it's great, and you get chatting to people in the stands, right? They've got nothing else to do. They can't scroll through TikTok, so they're forced to talk to this English guy, the pasty one in the stands, and we have a great chat. But it's wonderful, really.
There is two sides to that sword. I mentioned this earlier as well, is the fact that I went to the 10th yesterday because I'm a left-handed golfer and I wanted to see Bubba Watson's ridiculous curler. And then you get there and you look around, like, Jesus, there's where Rory was between the white cabins in 2011, where the wheels really start to fall off. That everywhere you look, there's obviously the dream and the fact it looks great. There's also the nightmare, and you know how things can go wrong here too.
Yes. There's the nightmare. There's the as you said, there's bubble out the trees. There's all these amazing shots. I was in the grandstand last year when Rory hit his second from 15 and followed it. And I thought that was the greatest golf shot I think I've ever seen of it in real life. And then he beat it on the Sunday, and I didn't see it. Ironically, though, he missed the putt, didn't he, on the Sunday? But just seeing moments like that, absolutely phenomenal. And I had the pleasure of actually playing the course last year, and let me tell you, that shot is not an easy one, and I got nowhere near it.
What did you shoot?
99. I broke 100, but I had a lot of help from the caddies.
What have you made of Rory this week?
Have I made a what? Sorry,
of Rory this week.
Rory, he says he's relaxed. He says he's kind of on a cloud 9, and you can see that in him a bit more. I'm really fascinated to know whether that's gonna improve him or whether he needs that drive. He needs a purpose. He sometimes does he need the weight of something to really spur him on. He's obviously a professional golfer, and he's obviously a professional athlete, which means he's always going to have an incredibly high competitive drive. But it's going to be really fascinating to know, he's so relaxed. Is he too relaxed? Is he going to sort of coast through it and not really threaten, or will he find that fire again and really kick on? So it's nice to see him relaxed, because the last few years it's been a bit tense. So it's nice to see him in a different space. It'd just be really interesting to see how that translates to the game throughout Thursday and Friday.
I'm a bit conscious that a lot of people back home are going to be listening to this on Thursday, but if we briefly look at the field here, Rory asked us last year, what was the thing that we're all going to talk about when we came? And then when you're thinking about coming for the last couple of weeks, you're kind of conscious of that too. That is have you missed the squeeze? But I personally, for me anyway, it still is an interesting competition. And we're going to say this because it's partly in our interest, but purely because you can actually pick holes in a lot of the top players right now. So if you Scotty Scheffler and the birth of his second son, or Rory McIlroy and his back, and whether that he needs that competitive edge, if it's going to dull him or if it's going to propel him forward, that extends to basically the entire field. It's just a very long-winded way of me asking you who's going to win.
I think I don't know why I have this feeling. I just got a nice feeling about Jason Day. I spoke to a member of security who told me Jason Day had been here since Friday. And he's been really practicing. And when he was interviewed by the in-house media, he said, I don't want to go as far as to say I'm feeling the best ever, but I'm feeling pretty good. All those, I mean, that might mean nothing if he goes and bogeys the first 5 holes. But I think he's got a strong chance. And I'm really fascinated to see how DeChambeau will respond as well from that sort of final pairing collapse he had last year.
I think there's a lot of myths about this place, and some of the cliches are definitely true. It is a lot more hilly than it looks on TV. The greens are deceptively big. But one of the greatest myths is the idea that Masters only starts in the back 9. And increasingly, especially you look at the data analytics now, you got to be in contention from early on, or you're out of the picture here. In that context, what happens on Thursday is going to be pivotal for that. For somebody like Shane Lowry, there's even more need for it to start fast, given what he's experienced recently. How do you see that going?
I think you're 100% right. It really does depend on those first 9 holes. I think he's a very emotional player, isn't he? And I think it's very obvious what's happened over the last few tournaments that he's played in, particularly cognizant. I was actually there at Truist last year when he fell away there as well. He's very mental. So if you start strong, then great. The issue is, as with Shane recently, is if he starts strong, can he stay strong? And that's the biggest worry. But you're right. For someone like him, he has a good first round, front 9. I think that'll really put him in the mood, get in the groove. But his issue lately is staying there, isn't it? So let's see. Hopefully, he's such a great player to watch when he's going for it. He's a great energy, great buzz. So yeah, he's a pleasure to speak to as well. So I really, really hope he does well.
And I think to finish on this point, it is kind of the contradiction about this place. Like on paper, there's a lot of reasons why you would be pretty optimistic for Shane Lowry. His short game was definitely suited to here. His record is surprisingly decent as well. And then he talks to you about the fact that he's never driven up Magnolia Lane happy, that he has those haunting memories of how his final day went last year. Admitted himself he probably should have taken a week off after the Classic this year too. And you start to realise that all that baggage too can start to build on you if even the first 2 holes start to slip.
Yeah, so I was there in the mix zone on the Saturday last year when he double bogeyed the last 2 holes, I think, on the Saturday.
This is the famous interview where he's, don't ask me about Rory.
Yeah. And I kind of felt for him. He's a major winner in his own right? He's a huge star. And I think sometimes he probably feels like he's being forced to live in Rory's shadow. And I get that it's hard because Rory is Rory. But, he's a major winner in his own right. So, but that goes back to the emotion I'm talking about. He snapped, didn't he? Rather than try and swallow it, he snapped. And he's actually said to me before, and he's said publicly as well many times, that he needs that cool-off period before speaking. But then you don't get the raw emotion that we all get, right? So it's that's what we want as fans and as media. But yeah, it's difficult for him. So I think he just needs to try and keep a level head, I think. And I think he's got a chance. He can post a good score around here, as you said. So yeah, it really depends on how he starts and that first front 9 and first round in particular.
Yeah, so I'll stick my neck on the block, seeing that you did as well. I'm going to say Ludwig Åberg this week. I just think that his record here since a rookie, I followed him in 2023 when at Marco Simone he made Scotty Scheffler cry with that phenomenal rounds. So I put my neck on the block and I'll go for that. Tom, thanks for talking to us today.
No problem.